So when we left off in the previous video in Medias Res, we had been talking about the Pythagoreans and about their influence for the initiation, or the fact that they're the initiators of the history of studies about sound and auditory perception. And when we had been talking about the legend that surrounds the figure of Pythagoras, that legend about him walking by the blacksmith's shop, and then how what really happened was that there was an investigation of the different lengths of strings, probably from the lyre. We had talked about also Archytas, who was one of the Pythagoreans, disciple probably of Philolaus, who is also probably the first successor of Pythagoras in the Pythagorean school. And we had talked about how Archytas had been instrumental in researching this about the different sizes of different sound-emitting objects and the proportions that conformed the musical scale, and how the Pythagoreans had been the first to initiate a musical system with musical scales. And going back to Archytas, what I want to do this time is a parenthesis into something that's not really in my research, but that I think is very interesting because it's a concept that has lived a long and interesting life even into our days. And it's credited to Archytas. Archytas, as I had mentioned before, was probably contemporary with Plato, moved the same circles, probably knew each other. This is about 4th to 5th century before Christ. And Archytas is reputed to be the founder of mathematical mechanics. And he worked with these proportions. And one of the ideas that he is credited with also is the idea that the planets, if the planets move, and these are huge celestial objects in movements, that movement must therefore generate a sound, some sort of hum or some sort of frequency, because it's impossible that such big celestial objects will move without emitting a sound. So this is what has been known as the harmony of the spheres, or the music of the spheres. And this sounds, since the planets were obviously placed in proportion to each other, then these sounds would be proportional to each other. And what Archytas proposed was that these proportions were the same proportions that we saw in the intervals that they had discovered that started forming the first musical scale. So therefore, the simultaneous movement of the planets would emit a harmonic music. And this is the concept of harmonia, which is a very important Pythagorean concept, as the harmony that underlies the universe, not only manifested in music, but in everything. Because for the Pythagoreans, number and harmony were the foundational principles of everything that exists in reality and of their cosmology. We had mentioned how Archytas influenced Plato's cosmology too, and this idea of proportionality between the spheres of the different planets appears in Plato, both in the Republic and the Timaeus. He's proposing 8 orbits that are proportional to each other, the first one that's going to take issue in a sort of ironical way with this idea is going to be Aristotle. In the Kylo, he's going to say, well, yeah, this is all very nice and sounds very interesting and it's very compelling, but it's just not true. Why? Because obviously the compelling idea of a universal music that's sounding would sound very good, except for the fact that we don't hear it. So how come we don't hear it? If these huge planets are moving and making sound, and it's a Harmonia sound, how come we don't hear it? And the explanation of the Pythagoreans was, well, because when we were born, this was already sounding. And hearing, auditory perception, depends on, the being able to compare the absence and the presence of sound. So if that sound was already present, therefore we don't hear it because it was already there. Well, Aristotle wasn't buying that explanation, and he's going to take issue with it. He's going to say it's all very nice, sounds very beautiful, but it's just not true. Nonetheless, the idea, the concept of a harmony and a music of the spheres is going to be powerful, is going to continue on. In Ptolemy, for example, who's both an astronomer and a theoretician of music. The idea of a harmony between the planets and a harmonious placement of the spheres is going to continue. And Boethius, in the 5th to 6th century of our era, is going to also take this concept and take it a step further into an organization, a three-part organization of music that he proposed, where he had Musica Mundana, which is this universal music or this music of the spheres, then Musica Humana, which is the harmonious music that results from the functioning of our bodies, and then Musica Instrumentis, which is the music that we now call as such. So these ideas are going to be very powerful. They're going to be very influential in esotericism and Christian esotericism. They're going to continue on into the Middle Ages and well beyond. And as a matter of fact, nowadays, we still see in the New Age movement, for example, and the many musical manifestations that have come out of it, the survival of the concept of the music of the spheres. Well, in the Middle Ages, this is going to be a very powerful idea because the music is a discipline that is not what we consider today. For the medieval mind and from antiquity, music is very much in the same line, is completely imbricated with astronomy, with arithmetic, with geometry, which are the other three disciplines of what we know as the quadrivium. We know there's seven liberal arts. Four of them are closest to what we would call scientific, and they are music, arithmetic, geometry, and astronomy. Music, therefore, is not just what we nowadays understand as music. Music is completely related to mathematics and to the workings of the universe, to a cosmology. So we see the concept continuing to live on through the Middle Ages, and we see Johannes Kepler in the 17th century. In 1619, his book Harmonices Mundi is going to take this idea also, but he's going to abandon the Pythagorean tuning system as the basis of this harmonia, of this concordance or consonance of this music of the planets, and he's going to propose that it's related to the angular velocity of the planets. The important thing and the compelling thing about this concept of the music of the sphere and the fact that it's survived for so long is the fact that what underlies both concepts, the concepts of the music of the spheres and a universal harmony, is this idea that our physical reality, the harmony that's supposed to exist in our physical reality, is a reflection of that cosmological harmony. And that's, I guess, the reason why this concept is so powerful and has lived on, because for many centuries, scientific endeavor and philosophical endeavor was very much focusing on trying to prove that this is so, that what happens here is a reflection, a micro reflection of the macro reality of the universe.